Hello, everyone. It's been a while. Hope you're doing great. What have I been up to? Well, I wrote a new book, Re-Enlightening. What's this book really all about? Well, I sincerely believe that we are at a time when great change is happening. Now, when talking about change, there are two types of people in this world. Those who believe that history is cyclical, goes around in circles, and those who believe it's all about continuous progress. I'm in the third camp, that it's a bit of both. What some will call late-stage capitalism, perhaps, is to me part of a grand cycle where we have a pause. Nikolai Kondratiev called it winter. And this occurs when the system in place, designed in a time long before tremendous progress, simply cannot keep up any longer. Debt is part of that, with a jubilee canceling it out, but often it's just changes in products available because of technology or the number of actors that are in the market at the time. Now, the last time this happened was in a time that was extraordinary in many ways. It was World War II. And the development world was essentially flattened, except for the United States. And the horrors of that war scared the leadership of the world into the cold rationalism that made them realize that winning the war was not enough. They had to win the peace, too. And that's why they got together in a little New Hampshire resort town called Bretton Woods in 1944, 1 month after D-Day. The world that we know today, the economic systems of the world, for better or worse, were deliberately created. Now, this has run its course for many reasons. The most important of which is that it was wildly successful in its main objectives. The world is much more materially prosperous than it ever was before. It has evened out dramatically with the gap between top and bottom equalized. Interconnection has made war not just expensive, but immediately so. But more importantly, the Enlightenment ideals of liberty have been greatly expanded around the world. Now, it's far from perfect, of course. Economic systems are all about material wealth, so all of this is possible to the extent that money buys you happiness. And there are still people in the world who are starving. There is still war. It didn't reach everywhere. But more to the point, the very institutions that created mechanical prosperity in a very industrial sense have become weary. Much of that is about who gets to be in the room where these institutions operate. This means that the systems that we have in place will continue to evolve as they have been, but at some point they reach a breaking point where new systems, new approaches will have to be chosen. And this begs the obvious question: who will do that choosing? Now, in 1944, it was obvious. The U.S. dictated much of what was going to happen simply because it was the only nation capable of making anything work on a global scale. Today, we can be sure that the nations which rebuilt and the nations that rose will be in that room, alongside the nations that are still working it out. Each of them will bring their own material and cultural needs, along with big heaps of pride and vanity. If this is to be done from the top down, it's likely to be ugly and require some force. So how do we make it more bottom up? My view is this: the choice is coming. But if it was made right now, there is no way that it could possibly be done bottom up. We don't have the language to even begin discussing options, let alone the necessary trade-offs between them. Ideologies, the great isms of the world like capitalism and socialism, are generally solutions in search of problems. None of them is a complete package. Re-Enlightening is about developing a framework for understanding what choices have been made in the past and what choices we can make today. I tried very hard to make it as objective as possible, not choosing one or the other, but focusing on the relative strengths and weaknesses of each approach. The goal is a common language that crosses lines of time and place, so that we can be as reasonable as possible about the choices that we make. And it is that spirit of reason that I see as central to the original Enlightenment, along with the realization that, in the words of Confucius, if we stop learning, we stop living. One way to look at this is a reinvigoration of Enlightenment ideals, given everything that we have learned over the last 250 years. Now, will these choices be made entirely by reason? Of course not. And reason-based is not as high of a standard as rational, which is something we will never quite read. But we don't need to assume that. What we can do is at least discuss what we are doing in ways that do not allow those who want to maintain their power to distract us and divide us. It's our only hope for making the next world more bottom-up, with opportunity for everyone, than it ever has been before. And that's what this is about. I tried to get to the point quickly, hitting hard. I tried bringing in perspectives on balance, knowing that institution building is very different from starting a revolution. And that's one of the key problems I have with the original Enlightenment. I tried to make it as timeless as possible, knowing the political tracks from the past, like Adam Smith and Karl Marx and John Maynard Keynes, become very dated and irrelevant. If you're looking for answers, I did my best to ask you first. The point is that we need to have a productive discussion, centered on liberty and a genuinely bottom-up view of the world if any of this is going to work. This means that my opinion is just one of 7 billion. So I tried to keep it out as much as I possibly could. Let's start that discussion. You made it this far. So why not try a more organized read that really gets into it? And yes, let's talk about what we can and cannot do going forward. The world is ours, or at least it damn well should be.